The shell that will decide 100 lives is already in the air when Silas Wakefield presses his frozen face into the French snow. Eastern France, 1945. Night and daylight have the same color here, gray over white. The farmland is a broken sheet of ice, torn by craters and black with burned wagons. Tanks growl somewhere beyond the low ridge, steel shapes moving like slow animals in the mist. German voices pass over the wind. Boots crush the crusted snow with a steady, hunting rhythm. Silas is crawling, not walking. One leg drags behind him, stiff and hot with pain under soaked wool. His fingers are numb, but they still hold the thing that matters most, a thin, dark telephone wire that snakes across the open field behind him. Every yard he pulls it forward, he knows he is 1 yard closer to a place where he may not get back up. For a moment, his vision blurs, and the field is gone. He is back in the Kentucky hills at first light, fog hanging low in the holler. An old 22 rests easy in his young hands. His father's voice is almost a breath in his ear, teaching him how to slow his lungs, how to listen to the space between sounds. His kid brother steps where he steps, trying not to snap a twig. The cold air smells like damp leaves and wood smoke. There is no metal, no fire, no foreign language, only the soft crack of a single shot and a deer dropping in the distance. Then the memory breaks. A tank engine roars closer. Silas drags the wire another arm's length and feels it tug at his belt. Behind him, somewhere through the ice and haze, a thin line of American men are dug in too shallow, too tired, too few. In front of him, German armor and infantry are forming a hammer that will fall on those men if no one stops it. He is the last pair of eyes forward. He is the only voice that can bring the big guns down. Where he stops crawling is where the fire will land. He knows the truth now, clear and cold as the air in his lungs. The only way to break this push is to call artillery on his own position. So here is the question that will not leave you alone: if your brothers' lives depended on you dying alone in this field, with no promise anyone would remember your name, what would you do? Stay with this man, in this snow, as a nearly forgotten act of courage is dragged out of the dark. Because this is not just a story about war. It is a story about what a single silent choice can cost. Before the wire, before the snow, Silas Wakefield was just a boy in the Kentucky hills, learning how to disappear. Dawn comes first to the ridge tops above the Kentucky hollers, painting the mist in pale gold before the sun ever reaches the valley floor. Silas Wakefield steps through wet grass with a worn rifle on his shoulder. His boots leak at the seams, and his jacket is one size too small, but he moves like he belongs to this land. Fog curls around his legs. A bird calls once and then falls silent. He lifts his hand, and the world seems to hold its breath with him. He does not talk. He watches. A deer stands half hidden at the edge of the tree line, steam rising from its back in the cold air. Silas reads the wind by the way the fog drifts. He measures the distance without thinking about numbers. He shifts his weight so the old board under his boot will not creak. Other boys learn their letters from a book. Silas learns them from tracks in mud, from how far a sound carries on a still morning. Back at the house, the porch boards complain under his father's step. His mother's hands are raw from scrubbing and canning. Smoke seeps from the chimney and hangs low, too heavy to rise. There is not much money. There are no spare coats. But there is a quiet rule here: if you can help, you do. If someone is hungry, you carry the gun. When he squeezes the trigger and the shot cracks across the valley, it is not sport. It is food. It is his mother not skipping her own plate so the boys can eat. It is boots, coal, a patched roof. That sound rolls back and forth between the hills, a sharp, clean report that fades into silence. He lowers the rifle and watches the deer fall, a mix of pride and something like guilt washing over him. One day soon, a different kind of gunfire will reach for him. And when it does, it will not echo safely over trees. It will be looking for his heartbeat. The radio on the kitchen table is the loudest thing the Wakefield house has ever known. It snaps and hisses with static, the green light dull against the rough wooden walls. Outside, the wind pushes at the loose window frame. Inside, wood smoke curls under the low ceiling. Silas sits with his elbows on his knees. His kid brother leans against his side. Their mother stands with her hands in a dish towel, water drying on her knuckles. Their father's jaw is set so tight a muscle jumps in his cheek. A voice comes through the static in short, clipped bursts. Strange names. A harbor across the country. Ships. Planes. Fire. The words do not land all at once, but the tone does. The room grows smaller with every sentence. Silas looks at the old hunting rifle in the corner. For the first time, it feels small, like a toy left over from a different life. His father does not speak, but when their eyes meet, there is a kind of agreement there, heavy and simple, it has to be someone. Days turn into lines at the post office, posters in town, talk of lists and numbers. One morning a letter comes with the government seal. His mother reads it twice, lips moving, then presses it flat on the table as if weight might change the words. At the train station, steam pours around the wooden platform and wraps the crowd in white. Men swap jokes that do not quite land. A band plays a tune that nobody hums along to. Silas stands with a canvas bag at his feet and the draft notice folded in his pocket, soft from his fingers. His mother holds his sleeve until the last moment. His father gives him a grip that speaks for both of them. There are no speeches, just breath and eyes and a single nod. When the whistle screams and the cars jerk forward, he steps up into the unknown. The platform slides away. The hills roll back into distance. The cabin, the fog, the deer trail, all of it shrinks in the train window until it is only color and then nothing. If you knew this ride ended in a frozen ditch on the far side of an ocean, would you still have climbed aboard? Fire. The command rides over a whole line of rifles at once, a rolling wave of sound that crashes against the berm at the far end of the range. Silas stands among men from cities he has never heard of, coats new and stiff, boots that match. The air smells like oil, dust, and burnt powder. Targets sway on the frames out past the numbered markers. Instructors pace behind the line, eyes sharp, voices rough from long days and louder drills. At first, some of the men laugh at his drawl, at the way he says holler and creek. They call him country boy, hill man. But when the first string of shots is over and the targets come sliding back, their words dry up. His group is a tight, ragged circle dead center. Holes so close they almost chew into one mark. An older sergeant with a face like carved stone squints at the paper, then at Silas. "Do that again," he says. Silas does. Lying prone, kneeling, standing. Wind in his face, sun in his eyes. He breathes the way his father taught him, slow in, slower out. The rifle is heavier than the one back home, the stock smoother, the scope glass clear. But the rule is the same. If they hear you, you do not eat. If you move wrong, you do not bring anything home. Soon he is set aside with a different weapon, one with glass on top and finer marks on its sights. He is shown how to blend into brush, how to move when everyone else is still, how to find a man by the small mistakes he makes when he thinks no one can see him. At night in the barracks, the others joke and slap cards on the table. Silas sits on his bunk and looks at his hands. The skills that once kept his family fed now belong to something much colder. On a cork board near the door, new orders go up under a pin. Names. Units. Destinations. His finger traces down the list until it hits the line that will carry him across the sea. He does not yet know which man in that column he will one day lie down and die for. But the path is chosen. The Atlantic heaves under the troopship like a living thing trying to throw them all off its back. Inside the metal belly, men sleep in stacked bunks so close they can feel each other's breath. The air is thick with sweat, soap, wet wool, and the sour tang of those who have lost their fight with the waves. Somewhere above, engines drone without rest. The whole ship shudders with every lean and surge. Silas lies on his narrow bunk, one arm over his eyes, listening to the creak of the hull. Cards slap on a crate nearby. Someone tells a joke about going to meet French girls, and a few tired laughs rise, more out of habit than joy. Another man coughs until he spits into a bucket. Boots clank on the ladder as a group makes its way up to get a breath of cold, clean air. He reaches into his pocket and takes out a folded sheet of paper. His mother's letter is soft at the creases, lines dark where her pen pressed hard. He does not need to read it again, he knows every word. But he runs his thumb over her name at the bottom, as if touch alone can hold the line open between this swaying steel room and a quiet kitchen under low hills. Above deck, when it is his turn, the sky is a low lid of cloud. The sea stretches in every direction, no land in sight. The cold bites his ears and nose, sharper than any morning back home. He leans on the rail and watches the gray water slap against the hull, then lose itself in white foam. Men talk in low voices around him about what waits on the other side. Snow. Tanks. Woods full of men who know the land better than they do. Stories of units that walked into fog and did not come out. No one admits fear, but it hangs between them like breath in cold air. The coastline of Europe will rise out of this gray one day soon, fixed and real and full of people who want him dead. The first snowflake that lands on the barrel of his rifle does not look like a threat. It spins down through gray air and melts on the dark steel, a small, vanishing star. Silas lies in the rubble of a ruined village, cheek pressed to the stock, breath slow, finger resting beside the trigger. The houses around him are only fronts now, walls ripped open, roofs gone. Smoke seeps from broken beams. Somewhere far off, big guns speak in a slow, steady rhythm that never quite stops. The street ahead is a tunnel of stone and dust. A cart is tipped on its side. A door hangs by one hinge. Loose paper flaps in a dead window frame. The air smells like burned wood, brick dust, and the sharp bite of cordite. A dog trots through the wreckage, ribs showing, nose down. It disappears around a corner and does not come back. The first shots of the day come without warning. A line of muzzle flashes blinks in a second-story window. You do not hear the first round that kills the man beside you. One instant he is breathing hard, hands on his weapon, eyes on the same street. The next, his body folds sideways. He slides down the wall and leaves a streak on the stone that steams in the cold air. Time does not stop. But for Silas, it might as well. He stares at the open eyes inches from his own boot. The mouth is still half open, as if a word was on its way out and never made it. This is not a paper target. This is not a deer that will feed his family. This is a man whose name someone is saying in a kitchen a world away. A shout drags him back. Plaster explodes near his head, showering him with dust. The old lessons fight the new fear. Duck, and live. Lift your head, and do your job. His hands shake once on the stock, then settle. He breathes in, slow and deep, the way his father taught him. Breath out. Find the source. Squeeze, do not yank. The day ends with more bodies than it began, the village no closer to peace. That night, Silas lies in a shallow scrape in frozen ground. Men cry for home in hoarse whispers. Some call for mothers, some for wives, some for no one, just pushing sound out so they know they still can. The sky is a low lid over them, cloud hiding the stars. The war has only just started for him. And already it is asking what he is willing to lose. The war that presses on his chest in the mud is first drawn in pencil on a piece of paper. Inside a dim farmhouse, the windows are blacked out with blankets. A lantern swings from a beam, sending light over a table covered in maps. Lines cross other lines. Symbols crowd the paper. Men in heavy coats lean over it, fingers tracing roads, rivers, and ridges. Silas stands against the wall, rifle slung, trying to keep out of the way and still close enough to hear. His breath fogs in the cold room. Ice grips the corners of the windows. Outside, the fields are white and flat, broken by hedgerows and black trees without leaves. This is eastern France in winter. Open land that offers no mercy to someone caught in the wrong place when metal starts to move. He hears words he has learned to fear. Counterattack. Armor. Breakthrough. Regiments and divisions he has never seen on paper are now pushing toward thin places in the line where men like him are all that stands. The pencil tip taps a spot on the map, a patch of farmland cut by a shallow ditch and a low rise. Tanks here. Infantry here. If they punch through, they will roll up the flank, hit the rear areas, open the road to small towns that barely know they are in a war until it walks down their main streets. There are not enough radios. Batteries die in the cold. Sets get smashed in shelling. The officers talk about a field telephone, the old, simple line that does not care about weather so long as the wire holds. It is the kind of tool that lives or dies on the man who lays it. Silas watches the finger trace that same piece of ground again, the place where white paper shows a small bend in a stream and little else. Soon, it will not be a symbol. It will be where he crawls. The spool of wire lands in his hands with more weight than the metal should carry. They are back in the line now, in a shallow trench scraped out of frozen earth. Breath hangs in the air over every man's head. Shell bursts bark in the distance, closer than they were yesterday. Across the field, dark shapes move around low mounds of snow that hide guns and men. An officer steps up, face drawn tight, eyes older than they were last month. He sets the field telephone case down with care, then drops the heavy roll of dark cable into Silas's arms. The wood core is cold against his chest. The wire itself gleams in places where the coating has scuffed off. "We need eyes up there," the officer says. "Past that low rise. We lay this line, we can call in the guns when those tanks start their run. There are other men here who can crawl. But everyone has seen what Silas can do when he moves low and slow. They have watched him vanish into brush and come back with news that kept them alive. No one says his name. No one has to. He knows why they are looking at him instead of the next man in the trench. The clock is already running. Scouts have seen armor massing in the tree line. Tracks have scarred the snow. There is no time to wait for more gear from the rear, no time to dig deeper, no time to hope the enemy will choose another road. He feels the pull between bone-deep fear and the plain duty he learned on a ridge back home. If you can help, you do. If someone must step forward, you do not point to the man beside you. Another soldier, face smudged and eyes red, reaches out and taps the wire. "You sure, Wakefield?" he asks, voice low so it will not carry. Silas meets his gaze and gives a short nod. No bravado, no joke. Just the simple answer of a man who has already decided which side of the trench wall he belongs on today. The narrator turns to you for a moment. If someone dropped this wire into your hands and told you it might act like your own rope if the enemy found it, would you carry it out there anyway? Silas slips the strap of the telephone over his shoulder. He hugs the spool to his side. Then, without a speech or a wave, he turns and climbs the short, icy wall. Snow meets him like a slap. The open white stretches out, broken by small humps and broken fences. Somewhere out there, glass sits in scopes, waiting for a flicker of motion. He lowers himself to the ground until his chest touches ice, and he begins to crawl. His world shrinks to the width of his shoulders and the next few feet of snow. Silas pulls himself forward on his elbows, leg dragging, boots barely clearing the crust. Each push feels like it grinds bone on rock. Wet cold seeps through his coat and pants until he cannot tell where his body ends and the ground begins. The telephone wire pays out behind him in a dark line, vanishing back toward the trench. Shots crack in the distance, single pops and short bursts. Farther away, the deep, steady rumble of armor rolls over the frozen land like distant thunder. He can feel it in his chest more than he can hear it. It reminds him of summer storms in Kentucky, when the sky grumbled long before the rain came, but there is no comfort in that echo now. Broken helmets, torn packs, and twisted bits of barbed wire stick up through the snow like black roots. He uses them as markers, as cover, as reminders of what happens when someone else does not crawl low enough. His breath fogs the air in front of his face. He has to force himself to slow it, to keep it from coming in panicked bursts. He lays the wire flat, pressing it down into furrows and hollows, always thinking about the line of sight from some unseen eye looking back from the far side. A stray glint could give him away. A loose loop could snag and jerk. Inside his head, another track plays. His father's voice, soft and steady, telling him how deer listen more than they look, how the forest itself will betray a clumsy step. His kid brother's bare feet slapping the cabin floor on cold mornings. His mother's hands in dishwater, steam rising, her back bent over the sink. The hymn the small church sang on winter Sundays, voices thin but sure. These memories crash and mix with the hard facts around him, the smell of exhaust and burned powder, the faint, metallic taste in the air that only comes when blood has soaked into cold earth. The steady grind of tank tracks out there, getting closer with each slow yard he steals. A shell lands close enough to pick him up. For a second he is weightless. Sound becomes a single hard blow. The ground hammers his ribs when he comes back down. Snow and dirt rain over him. The telephone case bangs his side. His ears ring with a high, steady tone. The world is all white and gray blur. When he blinks the haze away, he sees the wire. The blast has thrown it up and over a shattered fence post, where it hangs like a dark stripe against the snow. A line any eye could follow from one end to the other. German voices are closer now. He can hear them in short bursts, words he does not fully know but does not need to. The tone is enough. Orders. Laughter that is not kind. Boots crunching in a pattern that says they are not in a hurry. They feel safe. He lies still for one heartbeat, then another, every nerve telling him to grab the wire and yank it flat before someone sees. The choice is coming faster now than he wants it to. The ground gives way under his arm, and he slides into the shallow cut that will almost be his grave. It is barely more than a dip in the earth, a drainage line that summer rain once followed toward a creek. Now it is half full of ice and hard mud. Silas drops into it like a stone, hugging the telephone case and wire to his chest, willing his body to blend with the dark shadow at the bottom. Above him, the field is no longer empty. German soldiers move along the same low cut, using it for cover just as he does. Their boots stamp and slip on the icy edge. He can see the soles from where he lies, close enough that if he reached out he could touch the worn leather. Cloth brushes the air over his head. Cold breath clouds drift down. He does not move. Any twitch, any flinch, any turn of his head could send a tiny shift through the snow. These men are trained to see that. A shout, a few rounds, and it will be over. The wire will be cut. The guns behind him will be blind when the tanks begin their run. The line from the trench to his hand goes slack, then pulls tight. Someone back there is testing the circuit. Waiting for his voice. Trusting that the man they sent into the open is still alive, still crawling, still watching. Silence on the line will soon mean something worse than bad luck. It will mean they are on their own. His lungs burn. He forces each breath to come in small sips, nose pressed into cold dirt. The smell of tobacco from a cigarette above him mixes with wool, sweat, and the faint sting of oil from the weapons they carry. The moral weight settles where his body lies. If he stays as stone still as the bodies he stepped past on his way out, he might live. The men above him will move on, never knowing he was under their heels. The tanks will roll past. The hammer will fall on the thin trench that holds men who have shared his water and his stories. If he speaks into that handset, if even a whisper slips from his mouth, the odds say he will not finish his sentence. The narrator turns to you again. If the enemy's heel was inches from your face, would you risk a single word that could save 100 men behind you? One of the boots stops. The man above him looks down, not at Silas, but at the line in the snow where the wire crosses the ditch. He nudges it with his toe. Then he begins to follow it, eyes on the dark strand as it leads along the frozen ground. Step by step, he walks the wire back toward the point where Silas lies, chest pressed to the earth, heartbeat thudding loud in his own skull. The path of that boot is not random. It is an arrow. And it is pointing straight at him. The wire twitches again, and the boot on the surface nudges it harder, as if testing whether it is alive. Silas lies in the shallow ditch, face pressed into the cold mud, teeth sunk into his own lip to stop any sound. The German above him shifts his weight. Snow slides down the bank and lands on the back of Silas's neck, sliding under his collar like a knife of ice. He forces himself not to shake it off. Not to move at all. Then he understands. The voices around him, the clank of gear, the short, sharp words he does not need to translate, all of it forms a picture. The mass of men and machines is not passing by. It is forming up. The tanks out there in the gray are pointed straight at the thin line where his unit waits. This low draw he lies in is the center of the spear. He is not beside the target. He is under it. If he stays silent, if he lets the wire lie dead in his hands, that spear will punch through and rip his friends apart. Men who shared his food. Men who kept him awake with bad jokes when the cold hurt too much. Men who stood shoulder to shoulder with him in ruined streets while strangers tried to kill them. His mind flashes home again, but it is not the peaceful picture from before. It is his kid brother in those same hills, older now, looking out over the land, never knowing that his own chance to grow up was bought in a ditch across an ocean. A thought rises that he does not like, maybe his life is the smallest part of this trade. He inches the handset closer to his mouth, moving only when a shout or a burst of fire covers the faint scrape. Every inch is another roll of the dice. His heart feels so loud he is sure someone will hear it. Inside, the scale is simple and brutal. 1 man in a hole, or 100 in a trench. 1 name most will never know, or a whole line of names that might live to go home. Would you trade your 1 life for 100 if you knew your story might never be told? His teeth let go of his lip. He draws in a tiny breath, waits for another shout, another shot, and lifts the mouthpiece the last needed distance. The word that leaves his mouth is small, but it pulls a storm behind it. He gives the call sign and the first set of numbers in a voice that is barely more than air. On the far end of the line, in a dugout or a gun pit he cannot see, someone bends over a map and marks a tiny cross at the spot he names. Artillery crews load heavy shells into open mouths of steel. Fuses are set by hands that do not know who they are about to save or who they might bury. Above him, boots crunch. A man curses at the cold. Another laughs at something he says in a language Silas does not share. None of them know that the thin wire under their soles is the thing tying them to what is coming. He could stop now. Say the guns broke. Say he lost the line. Hang here between life and death until the tanks roll. But he does not. He forces himself to add the correction, nudging the impact closer. Closer. Until the circle of fire he is drawing on the map is not just near him but on him. When the voice on the other end asks for final word, he gives it. Fire on me, he breathes. No one here hears it but him. No one on that end sees the ditch he is in, the boots inches away, the way his fingers dig into the frozen mud. The first shells are already in the air by the time he lets his head drop back down. They announce themselves with a sound that is not like the smaller rounds he knows. This is a deeper, tearing rush. The sky itself seems to split. For a split second, there is room in his mind for one last choice, to be afraid, or to be done. He chooses neither. He simply closes his eyes. The blast picks the world up and shakes it. Earth, snow, and bodies lift off the ground as if gravity forgot them for a moment. Fire reaches down into the ditch. The sound is not one sound but all sounds at once, a hammer that hits bone and air and thought together. Shards of metal slice through meat and wood and wire. The air becomes a solid thing that slams into his chest. Somewhere behind him, men in the trench watch the place they last knew him to be vanish into light and smoke. They flinch even though they were the ones who asked for this. They grip their weapons tighter and do not say his name out loud. In the roaring dark, Silas makes a small decision. For one brief instant, he stops trying to breathe. If this is the cost, he will pay it. Then something stubborn and old and simple in him refuses to let go. His hands, acting before thought, claw toward the space he hopes is up. His fingers find a pocket of air under packed snow and torn earth. His lungs burn. He drags in a ragged breath full of dust and iron. When the last shell hits and the echoes roll away, there is no clean line anymore where the enemy once stood. There is only a torn field, a broken wire, and a question hanging over it all: did the man who called this storm survive the thing he summoned? Morning, or something close to it, seeps through the smoke in a dirty, gray light. Medics and infantry move out across what used to be a field and is now a map of fresh craters. Snow is no longer white. It is churned with soil and metal and things no one wants to name. The air is thick with the smell of burned fuel and something heavier. They follow the line. The telephone wire, scorched and buried in places, still threads its way across the wreckage like a dark vein. Where it vanishes under a collapsed shelf of earth and ice, someone shouts that there might be a man under there. Shovels and bare hands dig. Boots slip. A helmet rolls down into the pit and is kicked aside. At last, a sleeve appears, then a hand, still clamped around the handset so tight they have to pry his fingers open to free it. Silas comes up out of the wreck like something the field is reluctant to give back. His face is coated in dirt and blood. One eye is swollen half shut. His leg, already wounded before, now bleeds through new tears in the cloth. His breaths are shallow and fast. But they are breaths. For a long moment, no one says anything. They just look at him, at the wire that runs past him, at the broken shapes of German soldiers scattered around the spot where he lay. The shape of what he did settles over them. Then the words start. A medic, hands already in motion, calls him crazy in a way that is half curse, half praise. A chaplain makes a hurried sign over him, as if unsure whether to thank heaven for his life or ask mercy for what he just went through. One of the men who watched the blasts from the trench lets out a short, wild laugh that breaks into a choked sound. Silas does not answer them. His eyes search past their faces, as if trying to find the line in the snow where his choice stopped and the rest of this began. On the edge of the group, an officer appears with a clipboard in his hand. He looks from the craters to the wire to the man on the stretcher. He scribbles something on the paper, a few quick lines that can never carry the weight of what happened here. There will have to be a report. A form. Maybe a note in a file about a forward observer who remained at his post under heavy fire. Somewhere between this field and those words, part of the truth will fall away. Far from the frozen ditch, in a warmer room with a roof that does not leak, keys strike paper in a steady, flat rhythm. An officer sits at a desk stacked with folders. The typewriter in front of him pulls in each fresh sheet and stamps black marks on white. He has many battles to record. Many acts to fit into the space of a paragraph. Many lives to name or not name. When he reaches the part of the report that touches Silas's field, the language thins. The German advance is repulsed. Tanks are disabled. Enemy losses are heavy. Friendly forces hold present positions. A forward element maintains contact under extreme danger to adjust the fire. It is true, in a way. It is also clean in a way the ground where it happened will never be. Someone suggests a citation. Maybe higher command will like the story of a man who stayed on the line when most would have run. Maybe it will look good in a speech or a memo. Maybe it will get lost when the stack of other papers slides over it. Promotions must be given. Medals must be counted. Not every act can be lifted up. Back in the States, families open letters that speak of bravery and heavy fighting and honor. Some read about a battle in a part of France they never heard of before. They see phrases like, "thanks to the courage of your sons," and feel pride and fear in the same breath. Most never see the name Silas Wakefield. He sits one afternoon on a crate outside a field hospital tent, leg wrapped, body sore in places he did not know could hurt. Men move around him on crutches, in slings, with bandages over their eyes. Snow piles against the canvas and then melts in thin lines as the day goes on. He looks down at his hands as if they belong to someone else. These are the hands that held the wire, that dug into the earth, that dragged a breath out of choking dust. They look the same as they did when they carried a small rifle in the hills of Kentucky. You might ask, as the narrator does now, does history really remember the right men? Or are there more Silases than anyone will ever count, holding up the weight of grand stories from underneath, their names left in the cold? The clipboard passes again, this time with forms that will decide who is mentioned, who is thanked, and who becomes only a number. Years later, when the snow is gone and the field has grown over, no one walking there would guess what lay beneath. Grass covers the old scars. New fences run where the telephone line once did. The ditch has filled in with soil and rain. Children might play here. Farmers might drive across it without a second thought. The land remembers in ways people do not. But in the story you have just walked through, that line of wire still stretches tight between two worlds. On one end is a small cabin in Kentucky, where dawn spills over hills and fog curls in low places. A mother stands at a sink. A brother steps onto the porch and looks out over the yard. They live in the quiet, common safety Silas fought for, even if they never had the full picture of what he did. On the other end is that frozen French ditch, the place where he decided his own life weighed less than the lives behind him. His body in the mud. Enemy boots overhead. A choice that would never show up in bold print. This is not glory in the sense some like to tell it. There were no flags waving over his head when he whispered into that handset. No music rose when the shells fell. What happened here was lonely, heavy courage, the kind that sits in a man's chest long before he ever reaches a battlefield. So the question comes back to you, and this time it should land deeper than at the start. If you had been Silas Wakefield, cold and bleeding in that French field, with the sound of tanks in your bones and the wire in your hands, what would you have done? Do you believe one forgotten man can change the fate of hundreds, even if his name never makes it into the books? And how many men like him has snow and time already covered, their choices buried under short lines and long reports? You can let this story end here, as just another war tale among many. Or you can help carry it a little farther than the paper ever did, by speaking his name, by thinking about the cost that never makes it onto medals, by telling others that sometimes history turns on a man no one was watching. Somewhere between a cabin in Kentucky and a frozen field in France, a single, unseen wire still hums with the courage of a man history almost erased.